Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on a Thursday stormy night all across the country. I wish everybody a happy holidays. I hope not too many of you are having travel nightmares, but if you are, maybe this podcast can help you ignore your family and the general madness of the airport. It's time to talk about two of my basketball siren songs, two teams that no matter what, no matter how much they hurt their fans, no matter how many times they disappoint, no matter how many times they get injured at key moments, whatever it is, I can't quit them. I'll never quit them. One team, I feel like I have a healthy relationship. This first team, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. It's a problem. But here they come. As the song says, here come the Sixers. Here they come. Philadelphia, winners of 6 straight. Not even healthy yet. Tyrese Maxey is still out. 18-12, the Philadelphia 76ers, to help us digest them and where they rank in the East, the one and only Kevin Pelton. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I believe they are winners of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1,
Sixers.
2, 3, 4, 5, Sixers. 10, 9, 8, 76ers. It's the dumbest song, but it's the best song. It's the
fun.
Best song. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, it's the song they play at the end of every Sixers win in Philadelphia. And it's called Here Come the Sixers. It's basically a Sesame Street song about basketball, and it's amazing. And here they come. Here they come. I like to have you on to talk about Sixers because normally I have Spike Eskin and Mike Levin from the Rights to Ricky Sanchez, and they're so emotionally invested that they can, in the best possible way, go completely bonkers talking about the Sixers. And I need your cool, calming perspective on this team. They were in my inner circle of contenders before the season started. There were 6 teams in that inner circle. They were one. I asked everybody before the season, why not the Sixers? I mean, why not, other than James Harden's record of basically running for the exits in elimination games, but why not the Sixers? Then they came out and looked slow and disinterested, frankly arrogant, the way they started the season. Then Harden and Maxey got hurt, and this sort of scrappy Milton backup skeleton crew came in, kept them afloat. Now Harden's back, looking good. Not looking Houston good, not even Brooklyn good, but looking good. The supporting cast has stayed pretty damn productive. Tyrese Maxey is going to come back. Celtics falling back to earth a little bit. I think they've lost 4 of 6. Their offense is down big time. They've actually fallen out of the top spot in offensive efficiency. Bucks, just nobody talks about the Bucks. They were my pick to win the title. They're doing fine. How do we feel about the Sixers?
You know, it's funny you say that because one of the things I did in preparation for this podcast, there was something I was maybe going to bring up, and I wanted to see if it had been out there in the Sixers discussion. And so I was looking at Rich Hoffman's mailbag on The Athletic, and it was like, wow, this is so much angst in this mailbag, like backup center angst, coaching angst, starting lineup angst, all sorts of angst. And then my takeaway from this, and hopefully I'm going to say more revealing things over the course of this conversation, kind of feel like the Sixers are who we thought they were at the end of all of this.
Yeah, the angst, I feel like, believe me, I pay special attention to Sixers angst. It's the best basketball angst there is. I feel like it's died down in the last 2 weeks, in part because of how dominant Embiid has been and how fun that's been to watch. And DeAnthony Melton has been big. Tobias Harris is doing exactly what they want Tobias Harris to do. And Harden has come back and looked pretty good, and they've strung off some wins. So I feel like the Doc angst has declined. The B-ball Paul Montrezl Harrell angst. There's some angst that's just not worth it. It's just not worth. If you're angry about Paul Reed versus Montrezl Harrell versus PJ Tucker at the 5, it's worth getting a little angry about. It's not. If you're typing a mailbag question to somebody, subject line, Doc Rivers is an idiot, Paul Reed rocks, like, you need to reevaluate some parts of your life.
You're just subtweeting guest John Hollinger right here.
Or I guess I thought when you said, well, you can't just make Twitter jokes about the Sixers. It's triggering. Twitter Sixers. You can't do it. I don't even know where I was going. I think the angst has declined a little bit, and there's now, I feel, a building confidence of exactly what you just said of, hey, wait a second. We still have Harden and Embiid, 2-man game. It's not the most artful thing in the world, but Joel is clearly the guy. James knows Joel's the guy. If they get a switch, more often than not, the ball's going to go to Embiid at the nail, and it's not going to be Harden dribbling 17 times and taking a step back three while Joel stands there like, hey, it's just me, the dude who scores 50 every other game, seemingly over here, me. And it's fine. By the way, it's fine for James Harden to do that a decent amount of time. The Sixers, I looked it up today, they're averaging 1.22 points per possession on Harden isolations. That's like beyond elite. That's amazing. It may not look great. It may frustrate Embiid, but in the right doses, I've given up on the Sixers offense ever looking good and flowing properly and involving Maxey at the appropriate level when he's on the floor with the 2 stars. Like, it's just not going to happen. And maybe that's okay. Maybe Embiid and Harden are just so good that they can play, if not completely your turn, my turn, then something like it. And that's fine. And when it would really be fine if they could cut down the turnovers and make that into a very, very, at least we're going to get a shot up every single time, draw a ton of fouls. Like, maybe that's okay. It doesn't have to look good, right?
No, I mean, especially when, the strength of this pairing, and particularly, even though you talked about the pick and roll chemistry that they've developed, like the synergy between these two guys is their shared ability to draw fouls and what that does to defenses. And for Embiid in particular, he had a couple of rough games early in the season when he started slowly, but it's kind of hard for him, even when he shoots like 6 of 17, like some of these games, he's still going to put up points because he's getting 10 free throws a night. He's shooting 12 free throws a game. And that just, it gives a really high floor to what kind of performance you have. It's not very fun from a viewing perspective, but if you're trying to generate points efficiently, it's a pretty great setup.
Indeed it is. Oh, and by the way, the other thing the free throws allow you to do is set your defense. And maybe we should have headlined with that. This is the number 2 defense in the NBA right now. Started off as just fast break, fast break, fast break. Does anyone care that the fast break? No, another fast break. And all of us yelling about how embarrassing it was that the Sixers had 0 transition defense. Teams were just running them off the floor. And their transition defense is still bad. If you look at the numbers, it's still pretty bad. It's just regular bad. It's not horrendous bad. It's bad. But they're number 2 in defense. And I know what you're going to say. I know you got it loaded up. You got it locked and loaded. You got it locked and loaded. So just say it. Just say it, because I know what it's going to be. Just say it. Just burst my bubble.
Yeah, opponents are shooting 33% from 3-point range.
Opponents are shooting a league low 32%. Does anything? Do you when you see a team that's playing well defensively, and you look up opponent 3-point shooting, and it's like 28% for this 10 games or 32% for the season, do you just sit back at your computer like, oh, got him again? I can't wait to tell everyone it's just a fluke.
I'm not like happy about it. It's just
yes,
very
you are.
funny.
You are. You're happy about it.
I mean, I am smiling at the moment.
With the Knicks, you've been happy about it for 2 consecutive. You couldn't wait when the Knicks went on an 8-game winning streak to look up opponent 3-point shoot. You dropped everything. You pulled over your car to the side of the road and said, you know what? I bet those opponents are shooting 27% from 3. Sure enough.
It's funny. We did this on the Hoop Collective at the start
I know.
of the week,
that's why I'm saying it.
And I was looking that up on the fly. I didn't know. It just is my sixth sense when a team goes on a run like this. Probably some opponent 3-point shooting involved in that, because I've seen it so many times. It's, it's like Jeff Goldblum talking about chaos in Jurassic Park or something.
Wow. 1994 Jurassic Park.
I don't know where that reference came
The
from.
reason the Toronto Raptors are named the Raptors is because of Jurassic Park. Think about that. Boy, they're not very good, by the way. That's a different. Okay, so Sixers defense. Let's look at the fundamentals, because they are number 2 in the league. They force a ton of turnovers. That's pretty much the strongest part of their defense. They allow a decent shot. They don't allow a lot of threes or a lot of shots at the rim. Some of the good luck they're getting on threes is is compensated to some degree by the fact that teams are killing them at the rim when they get there. Even with Embiid there, this is the first season in Embiid's career where he is not having a negative effect on opponent shooting percentage at the rim, which to me doesn't pass the eye test. And it might just be a case of Embiid is one of those guys, when he decides to dial it up, it's very, very noticeable. And when he dials it up, I still think he's the same force defensively that he's always been. But in the aggregate data, it's not showing up. I think this is, if it's not the number 2 defense, I don't see it's, I think it's a good defense. They could certainly rebound better and foul less and all that, but I think they're kind of a fundamentally pretty solid defense. The test comes obviously when Harden and Maxey are on the floor together, because those are just, they're 2 minuses on defense and there's just no way around it.
Well, this is the thing I wanted to ask about, which is, do we have to consider at this point keeping DeAnthony Melton in the starting lineup when Tyrese Maxey comes back? I mean, at least, at the start, is you're easing him in, because DeAnthony Melton has been so good. He has been everything I think the Sixers could have hoped that he would be when they traded for him at the draft, hitting 37% of his threes, a quality perimeter defender to throw at opponent's best scorer on the perimeter, to take those assignments off the plate of James Harden and off the plate of Tobias Harris, who was having to take those last year after the trade. And, I think it's less about the whole, we need to get the ball in Maxey's hands thing, because you can make sure that there are minutes that he plays when Harden is not on the court either way. It's more about, we're going to find easier ways to hide Maxey if we're playing him and Harden together against second units than if we're playing him against starting lineups.
So my assumption has been Maxey as 6th man is too dramatic a change to realistically be made. That he's become too good, too prolific, that he, his agents, his people would not stand for it. And the team probably doesn't want to do it. I do think it's an idea that should be explored, because Melton has been one of the great offseason acquisitions in the entire NBA. And it's not just the shooting, and it's not just the defense, and it's not just the rebounding, which the Sixers badly need anyone but Embiid who can grab a rebound.
And even
Embiid's
defensive rebounds are down.
Yeah. And it's not just that they badly also needed someone, and Dan, get ready. I'm going to beep it out, because this is what I call DeAnthony Melton. He's the it up guy. He comes in and he F's stuff up, and they need somebody like that. And not only that, my favorite thing about him with the Sixers is he's been a really sneaky connector for them in the half court. And what I mean by that is he's a good screener for Harden in pick and rolls, for Embiid in pick and rolls, and he'll screen and he'll roll and he'll catch it in open space, and he'll make the right kick out pass over here, kick out pass over there. He'll cut when his guy doubles Embiid in the post, catch and kick. Like, he's just sort of keeping the machine moving. So I would assume that whether that lineup ever starts, so you're talking about Melton, Harden, Harris, Tucker, Embiid, whether it starts or not, that lineup has to become a big part of their team. Similarly, I would flip the question around to you. Is it worth considering starting Melton over Tucker, or closing with Melton over Tucker? You lose size, and in some matchups, that's going to be a non-starter for them. But PJ Tucker, man, he's just a statue. They're not using him like the Heat did when he would screen and hand off. He's just a statue. He never shoots. He's given him some offensive rebounding. Melton can do that. Melton just gives you so much more, like pound you in the face. And whether they start that lineup or not, because both Harris and Tucker are 4s, right? And you alluded to it before, Harris having to defend wings is out of position for him a little bit. This would correct that, playing the 3 guards with him and Joel. Whether it starts or not, I think that lineup has to become a big part of their team too. That lineup played 4 possessions together the whole season. That would be Maxey, Melton, Harden, Harris, Embiid. Your lineup, the one you mentioned, is plus 52 in 117 minutes. And I believe it's their most played lineup.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that was definitely something I thought about in terms of a closing lineup. I didn't think about it as a possibility to start, just because it seems, a little on the small side on the perimeter. But, Harden has always been more effective defending bigger players anyway. So that's kind of a benefit of it. I think, definitely to close situationally if it's a case where the opponents are small on the perimeter. There's not that LeBron Giannis type guy that you're going to need PJ Tucker to match up against. I do want to defend PJ Tucker a little bit and his 8% usage rate.
Is it 8%?
I think it was 7 or 8. It's between those.
You sign me for a day, I'm retiring with the usage rate of higher than 8%. I'm just saying.
Because the Milwaukee Bucks did win a championship with PJ Tucker at that usage rate. And one thing that, stood out watching the first half of last night's Philly Detroit game was, he snuck in on the offensive glass a couple of times. And that's something that he was doing
so badly.
Very much so. And that was something he did in Miami that has carried over. And especially if he's not going to be pulling the trigger on those corner threes, then you need him to be kind of a threat, in the dunker spot, sneaking in on the offensive glass, doing things like that, doing something, because if the alternative is D'Anthony Melton, I mean, it's not your nickname, but the Grizzlies broadcast, his more traditional nickname is Mr. Do Something.
They're good at coming up with nicknames. Maybe they stole. I never know what nicknames guys have in college, but Brevin Knight calling David Roddy Big Body Roddy. Was that a college thing too?
I don't know about that one. I wasn't catching a ton of Colorado State games. I did watch Melton a lot at USC. I don't remember hearing it there.
Big Body Roddy. I like David Roddy. I like David Roddy probably a little bit too much for considering he's a rookie. I don't know. Only this podcast would go on a 30-second David Roddy, Big Body Roddy tangent. Sixers Pistons, you mentioned. I watched that game too. You know what I liked about that game? I liked that the Sixers, and this is part of when it's go time, it can be your turn, my turn sometimes, particularly if 65% of the turns are Embiid and it's not a 50-50 split with Embiid and Harden, maybe 58% of the turns, I don't know, are Embiid. It can be that sometimes, but against the Bucks or the Celtics or whoever you want to put out there as an elite defense, it can't be like that every time. You just need a little more variety than that. And one of the things I liked in that Pistons game was they clearly made a concerted effort to push the ball, and not just on turnovers and not just on rebounds. After makes, they were pushing it. And it doesn't have to be like fancy fast break Showtime Lakers. They had one possession. People can look it up. It was the third quarter, I think with like 5.5 minutes left. It was off a made Detroit Pistons free throw, off a free throw made. James Harden inbounded the ball to Shake Milton, probably 2/3 of the way to half court. Shake Milton took one dribble and threw the ball ahead to Joel Embiid in the high post. Joel Embiid got the ball with his back to the basket and 21 seconds left on the shot clock after a made free throw. So in 3 seconds, Joel Embiid was posting up. No one was behind him. That's the benefit. There was no back line of defense because the back line wasn't there. Shake Milton threw in the ball, sprinted, dead sprint down the half court as like a cutter. Joel found him, layup. Just like 5 more of those every game makes a gigantic difference. And I think it was clear they made a concerted effort to like, can we just get out of the mud a little bit? And I think that's important. Even stuff like, this is an old Houston trick. When you're bringing the ball up after a make, instead of walking, James Harden, jog, and someone will be there for you at half court to set a pick that gets you going downhill. So we're getting off on a fast note. Just like a little more of that stuff, I think makes a big difference for them.
And the steals that they're forcing, I think, are helpful in that regard too. I mean, they had in the first half of that game alone 3 backcourt steals, 2 from Matisse Thybulle, who was kind of written off before the season because of the lack of shooting and wasn't a big factor in the playoffs last year. But they're actually playing great with Thybulle on the court. And one of the interesting questions that they are going to have when Maxey comes back is, how do you find minutes for all these perimeter guys? Because Milton needs to play. Mm-hmm. Daniel House Jr. has kind of been a disappointment, I think, but so he may be the guy who phases out of the rotation. But
I forgot, by the way, that they got dinged for tampering on Daniel House Jr. too, because I was like, wait a second. So the Knicks got dinged for the Brunson tampering, which is the most obvious tampering maybe in the history of the league. They got 1 second-round pick. It's like, oh my God. I hope the Knicks can recover from this blow. They've lost a 2025 second-round pick. I hope Leon Rose sleeping? Has anyone checked on him? Like, it's such a harsh penalty. And I don't really care either way. It's just like, just do nothing then if that's going to be the penalty. And I was like, wait, didn't the Sixers get 2 for PJ Tucker, 2 second-round picks? And I was like, oh, it wasn't just PJ Tucker, it was Daniel House. They tampered on Daniel House Jr. No offense to Daniel House Jr., he's got to be the worst NBA player to ever have been tampered on behalf of. It just has to be. By the way, people forget, remember the Daniel House Jr. bubble transgression? Google that. I like Daniel House Jr. He's a good player. So one way to get minutes for Matisse Thybulle is to trade him to another team that will play him. And if they're trying to upgrade their team now, I think that's the obvious vehicle to do it. I just don't know how much juice he has. And I know what the numbers say, KP. I know what they say. I really just don't like it when he and Embiid are on the floor at the same time. I just hate watching Embiid post-ups where they're playing 3 on, he's playing 1 on 5, because Matisse Thybulle is on the floor in the dunker spot. Nobody's guarding him. I don't like it. We'll get back to the Sixers in a minute, but I did want to ask you, what do you see with the Celtics? Are you concerned at all? They've lost twice to Orlando, a tough end to their road trip, at Clippers, at Warriors. And then, you think they're going to get, okay, chalk up the Orlando stuff is a little weird, whatever. Tatum missed a game, blah, blah, blah. Here comes Indiana. Like, they'll get well. And then Indiana comes in and puts up 70 in the first half on them. Anything going on there that concerns you?
When you look at the shot quality data, I'm significantly reassured, because if you look at the 3 games in a row that they've lost at home, they are getting, once you account for the players taking these shots, in addition to where they're from, type of shot, location of nearby defenders, the best shots in the league in that span, and underperforming them by a massive amount. 2 of those 3 games, their last 3 losses, have been among the 8 worst shot making performances relative to player ability by any team in any game this season. And it's not that dramatic when you go back over the entire 6-game stretch where they've lost 5 out of 6, but it's pretty substantial underperformance. They weren't necessarily due for this, given the fact that they were massively overperforming from 3-point range, as they got off to this best offense in NBA history start. But they were due to start making fewer threes than they had. And it's just kind of evened out more quickly than I think we would have anticipated.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned because A, some regression was coming. B, you've had Tatum miss a game here. Smart missed the game last night. They've had weird guys in and out of the lineup. And I do think, and I talked about this with Brian Scalabrine a few weeks ago, I was interested in incorporating Robert Williams III again, as much as they need him. And he looks fantastic, by the way. They've been playing almost the entire season with 5 3-point shooters on the floor at the same time. And now that's no longer going to be the case. And I think that was going to be an inevitable adjustment period. That said, the shot data is as you're describing is correct. I've looked it up too. Their turnovers are creeping up a little bit. Not super alarming, but just watch it. And their shots at the rim are coming down. And as wonderfully as they were shooting threes and as well as that works, I'm a big believer in the threes are going to go hot and cold. They'll be fine either way. I just like to give me a little more juice at the rim and at the foul line. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, those are, like we talked about with free throws for Embiid earlier, those mitigate some of the streakiness in outside shooting.
Yeah, Philly, just 17th in offense so far. Even with Embiid on the floor, they're kind of an average, slightly above average offense. As usual, they are plus a lot with Embiid on the floor and minus a little bit with Embiid off the floor. They should be better offensively than this. Anything stand out to you there, like where we could see improvement from the Sixers? Because 17th on offense or average, whatever you want to call it, is disappointing, I think, when they're at full strength.
Yeah, especially because you mentioned Tobias Harris in the intro. Like, he's delivering, I think, exactly the kind of season you'd want from Tobias Harris in this role. And it may be hard to tell because he's averaging the same number of points per game from last season, but, making threes at the best rate of his, or shooting threes at the highest rate of his career, making them at a high percentage. terrific efficiency. Like everything is there from Harris. I mean, the loss of Maxey is probably a factor there. This is a team that really has, 4+ offensive players. So if you take one of those guys out of the mix, that's a pretty significant drop off.
And Maxey, I talked about pace and kind of injecting some random, life into the offense. He's the guy to be like, hey, come run with me. Just outlet the ball to me. I'll create baskets by myself. He's that ingredient for them.
Yeah, and you put him back in the mix. I think they're probably a little weaker than they have been defensively, but better than they have been offensively. I think they probably get closer to, if not that top 10 on both sides of the ball that, I think we kind of expected coming in.
Interesting other thing. There are a couple of Harden things that are interesting to monitor. Number one, since he came back from injury on December 5th, he's back to getting to the rim in terms of percentage of his shot attempts that are coming at the rim at the rate he was getting there in Houston, basically. And at the beginning of the season, he had taken a lot of long twos compared to his career average, and all of that had come out of his restricted area shots. Those things are back to normal now, which is interesting. That's encouraging. We'll see if it stands up. No one is talking about the James Harden player option for next season. It seems like kind of a big deal to me that James Harden could be a free agent after this season.
I mean, the part that they weren't busted on was, well, boy, it was convenient that James Harden ended up agreeing to take precisely the amount of salary that allowed you to sign PJ Tucker and Daniel House Jr. using those exceptions that hard capped you. I think that element, the fact that there has been, he showed a willingness to work with the organization to do what's best for the team, probably makes people a little less concerned about that one.
Seems like a big deal to me. What did you make of the report in The Athletic about Zach LaVine and the Bulls not seeing eye to eye?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to have that reporting. I think it's not surprising to the extent that it's been a rough go for Chicago and people get frustrated. It's easy for players to coexist and, to sacrifice a little bit when things are going well, as they were much of last season. When things are going as poorly as they have been up until that game-winning shot from Ayo Dosunmu on Wednesday night, like that's when I think fingers start to be pointed and people start to be wondering about what's going on with my role and that sort of thing.
I do think it's interesting that when you think about, as we've all been thinking about since they built this team, basically, okay, well, if it doesn't work, how do you pivot? And the natural inclination is to say, well, LaVine's the youngest of these three sort of all-stars. By the way, they've all made the All-Star team. You've heard that they've all made the All-Star team. I don't know if you know, the Bulls have three All-Stars. They were referred
to as the big three. Yeah.
All three of them. Not the three alphas. There's only one three alphas in Chicago Bulls history. Only one. So, LaVine's 27, DeRozan's 33, Vooch is 32. Naturally, you sort of trade the older guys and see what you can get and rebuild around the youngest guy. And then, sometimes I'm guilty of it. My brain kind of stops there because there are 29 other teams to track and they all have big questions, blah, blah, blah. I do think the idea of, well, he might be the youngest. He also has the biggest and longest contract that may be viewed by some percentage of the league as an okay to not desirable contract. What if we actually go the other way and trade that player for other veterans who maybe fit better around DeRozan, or other young players and picks? You can trade that kind of player for lots of different things and clean up our cap sheet and just sort of, okay, we tried, it didn't work out. You get a new home somewhere else. That is an interesting alternative pivot if they choose to pivot. And so far, I don't think they're there yet, but it is interesting to think about. And I don't know what kind of trade value Zach LaVine makes $40 million next year, 43. in 2024-25, 46 in 25-26, and has a $49 million player option in 26-27. And it would be cute to say, well, he's definitely going to opt into that. He might not. He may very well not opt into that. Actually, it may be more likely that he opts out of it if he's still playing well and signs a new deal when the salary cap is 200 million, or maybe there's an upper spending limit. How did that upper spending limit? Boy, they had a whole set of meetings at the NBA headquarters. All right, guys, we can't call it a hard cap. We've brought in Don Draper from Sterling Cooper, 7 other PR firms. We've all told them, pitch us other words. It's like naming the newest pharmaceutical drug, like Ribazole,
I was gonna say
Bilagagy.
maybe bring in the Grizzlies broadcast crew.
Yeah. Anyway, and did you find, are there any Zach LaVine destinations that you would find interesting?
I don't like most of the ideas that I ran through. So, I mean, obviously the Lakers are going to come up because Zach LaVine is a star and played his college basketball in LA. Miami is a team that makes sense in terms of loves to chase stars, better defensively than offensively, have kind of the infrastructure to hide him. But at the same time, isn't Tyler Hero kind of more or less the same player? And hasn't Tyler Hero probably been better this season?
I was about to say, you could, Tyler Hero, 21 points a game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 46%, 41% from 3. I mean, what is it that exciting for me to trade Tyler Hero for Zach LaVine? Is that doing anything for me?
No, it's for older and on a longer and more expensive contract. Yeah, I mean, he's similar usage rates. Hero's been more efficient. Toronto also falls in that category of just a team that needs offensive juice. And I mean, maybe if you were hoping to, you wanted to trade Fred VanVleet because you thought he might leave and you didn't want to necessarily take a big step backwards, maybe it's a VanVleet Trent package. Those guys go somewhere else potentially, or some of them stay in Chicago. But I don't know if I know what the point of that is for the Raptors. I think if you're going to move those guys, you probably got to focus on younger yourself. The Clippers, I think, maybe are the most interesting fit on the board.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Didn't see that one coming.
Because, I mean, you could, again, plenty of hiding places to hide him defensively, could use a little more offensive juice, fits the timetable with their stars, even a little bit younger, but I don't think they have enough to get him unless Chicago is really convinced, like, it's kind of like the Norm Powell trade last year where the value of the trade is mostly the salary aspect of it rather than what you're getting in return. I mean, the two that I think are the most realistic outside of the Lakers, the Knicks. I mean, a team that, has a lot of minus defenders for a team that's better defensively than offensively. So maybe LaVine tilts you too far in that direction, but certainly an interesting possibility. And he could play very well with Jalen Brunson. The two of them could share the ball. And then I think the most interesting one is, what about the Mavericks? If you're looking for, he's not the ideal 1A to Luka Doncic in terms of so much of his value, again, is offensive and with the ball in his hands. But one of the reasons LaVine has struggled this year, he's less efficient than league average on self-created shots with more than 2 seconds of touch time, according to the NBA advanced stats data. He's still 10% better than average on, the catch and shoots and plays with less than 2 seconds of touch time. So maybe you put him in Dallas, it becomes a much more efficient fit for him.
They're on my list. The Knicks are also on my list. The problem with the Mavs is the same problem you outlined with the Clippers, which is, well, what players am I getting back that I'm excited about? If I'm Chicago, the Knicks certainly have picks and young players. We just saw the movie with Donovan Mitchell. I don't know, man. They're kind of, well, that's an interesting one. You don't want to get too convinced by a 10-game stretch that you've figured out something about yourselves or turned a corner or have all the pieces that you need. I've just never been a big LaVine guy. And I know 2 years ago, I thought he deserved to make All-Star. His shooting was just outrageous. Was a deserving All-Star. The defense hasn't come along. Off ball, it's a train wreck. His decision making with the ball hasn't come along. Every post entry is a complete adventure. He's good. I'm not. I don't know if I'm upending my franchise for him. Thought that was interesting though, and I do think it's a big couple of months for the Bulls. It's also a big month for the Hawks. Our old colleague Chris Haynes reported today a little bit of Trae Young, rival executives saying that Trae Young could be the next starter requested trade. Well, rival executives say a lot of things. I don't necessarily care too much about that, but Bobby Marks and I did kind of spend a little time last week just toying with fake Trae Young trades because, and this was before Travis Schlenk was shifted to an advisory role this week. We talked about this. There's a lot of noise about the Hawks, and none of it has really been good. And the play on the floor has only been so. And I know they've been injured. John Collins has been injured. Bogdanovich has been injured. Murray's been injured. They've had injuries. Capella's injured now. I just know, let's put it this way. The Travis Schlenk news did not surprise me. It did not surprise a lot of people in the NBA. There's just a lot of stuff there. And you can chalk up that Chris Haynes report as like, that's just more stuff that doesn't come out of thin air. And I do really like my Trae Young for Karl Towns challenge trade. I think what about a Trae Young for Zach LaVine challenge trade? The Hawks probably think Trae Young is in a different stratosphere than Zach LaVine. And frankly, in terms of playoff achievements, he has been.
And you could certainly make a case for like the question with Trae Young, if he goes on the market, is, well, wait, is Trae Young a superstar at this point? Because, I don't think that he's necessarily been failed by the team around him in the way that a lot of these superstars who ask trades often are. Like, he has to take some of the blame if the Hawks are a playoff disappointment, which is many months down the road. But, was what Haynes was talking about is precipitated in this. At the same time, you look at, his extension is going to be really reasonable as the cap rises. He's going into the prime of his career. All of those reasons, I think, would make him, still a player that would get pursued at that level, even if there are some questions about, again, his role in Atlanta underwhelming.
Okay, two more quick ones and then we'll stop. I wanted to just sort of take your temperature as we're not that far from the halfway point. We're talking all East right now. We talked about the Sixers. So let's zoom out. I want to play, who does Kevin Pelton believe can reasonably win the Eastern Conference this year? I assume Boston and Milwaukee are yeses.
Yes, that's a safe
Does
assumption.
Kevin Pelton believe the Philadelphia 76ers can win the Eastern Conference this year?
Yes, I think there's a path to it. I don't think it's super likely. It's interesting. The projection systems are much higher on the Sixers than I would have guessed. That they have them as, I think BPI has them ahead of Milwaukee, which is truly shocking. But like, even 538 has them as having a reasonable chance of winning the title this year. And that seems a little aggressive to me. I think there's a path to it, but to go back to, something you talked about at the start of the season with the Sixers, it's really it really depends on James Harden being able to play at an elite level in the playoffs. And he's played well this season, but I don't know if he's convinced me that that's in the cards.
I had them in my inner circle. I guess my litmus test for this question is like, if we get to the finals and they're in it, are you going to be like, well, lots of crazy things must have happened for that to occur? I think they can win the East still. I picked Milwaukee to win the championship. I think Boston's better than Philly, but I don't think it's unreasonable for Philly to win the East. And you talk about Harden, and I agree with you. Look, if Harden craps the bed in elimination games or big games or 2-2 games or whatever the biggest, highest stakes games in, if there's another 2 for 11 with 8 turnovers or the ball didn't come back to me, I took no shots in the second half, they're not going to win. Just not going to happen. But as much as we talk about him, I just think the more cracks he gets at it, we have not yet seen a monster Embiid playoff run. We have not seen an Embiid playoffs in any season from start to finish that has matched what he's done in the regular season. And just in terms of relative production to other players, he hasn't been the same guy. If he gets enough cracks at it and he's healthy and he doesn't get elbowed in the face and break an orbital bone or fall on his wrist. And by the way, in that Detroit game, he tried a chase down block when they were up 20 in the fourth quarter. Dude, Joel Embiid, no chase down blocks when you're up 20 in the fourth quarter. If he can, if those kind of things don't happen, he's going to have he breaks through the sort of postseason wall run in him. And that alone is enough for me to have them here. Okay, next one. Can the Cleveland Cavaliers win the East?
I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers,
no doubt.
They have the best point differential in the NBA right now.
Should they hang a banner for that? The point differential?
Look, but they haven't played an extremely easy schedule. Like,
they beat Boston twice. They just beat the Bucks last night.
There's no reason to rule them out right now. I mean, obviously the youth is a factor. The fact that they haven't been in the playoffs with this group. Donovan Mitchell has plenty of playoff experience, but I think you have to put them. I still have them a tier below Boston and Milwaukee, just because, again, we've seen that in the playoffs, how that works. But I think they're number 3, and I think they have a very legitimate chance of winning the East.
I just must be underrating them. It must be that my brain, they're so young and inexperienced that I'm like, is Jared Allen, is he actually ready for this? Is Evan Mobley, as much as I love Evan Mobley, is he really ready for this? Do I trust their bench? Do I trust that Rubio is going to come back healthy enough and Rubio-ish enough to give them real time? But Donovan Mitchell's played like an MVP candidate. I mean, in this year, he's not an MVP candidate because the top 5 guys are just insane. But he's been that good. And those 2 guards, man, they're just a handful. And those 2 big guys are monsters defensively. It feels to me like they fall right on the border to below my wait did something crazy here happen line. But that may be just like my brain is slow to accept a young, new team at this level. All right, you ready? Can the Brooklyn Nets reasonably win the Eastern Conference?
I still have them outside that line. I mean, they passed the any chance rule, but I would want to know what had happened. Not necessarily, obviously Durant could carry them through 3 rounds of the Eastern Conference playoffs, but to me the question is still, can we see it from Ben Simmons in a postseason setting? And it's been awesome. I want the best for Ben Simmons. It's been awesome to see him doing some of the things that we thought he could do in Brooklyn, as a connector, as a versatile player. But also in the month of December, in 120 minutes, he has not made a free throw in 4 attempts. And I feel like something like that is going to be an issue in a postseason setting.
I'm not ready to answer my own question yet. I'm just not. Should we do the was Toronto did Toronto make a mistake not going all in for Durant thing? Like, that's becoming a thing now because Durant is playing like the best player in the world. The Nets are winning, and Scotty Barnes is going like 1 for 11 and not playing well on defense. And there's this, even Doug Smith, who's a very affable guy, wrote this column today about how Scotty Barnes has been a disappointment his rookie season. He doesn't work as hard as he should. I'm paraphrasing, but that was in the column. Basically, there's been a lot of Scotty Barnes angst, and we're now transitioning to the mockery that Danny Ainge got for not putting his young players in to get Kawhi Leonard or Jimmy Butler or Paul George over and over again, clinging tenaciously to Jaylen Brown. It's starting to spill over to Masai Ujiri now. Like, dude, Scotty Barnes, you wouldn't trade Scotty Barnes for Kevin Durant, really? Let's posit that that's the case, right? Let's posit that that was a stance that Toronto decided that they were going to take. And we all talked the first day Durant demanded a trade. I was on NBA Today and I said, the first phone call I make if I'm Sean Marks to the Toronto Raptors, that's the very first phone call I make, because they had a great young player in a reasonable nucleus where they could have traded out of it, brought Durant in, and had enough to win, which is a very tough needle to thread. So how does that, where are you on that now?
So I think the biggest difference from this Danny Ainge situations is those guys all got traded. Kevin Durant didn't get traded. And part of the question here, and maybe this is hindsight bias in my case, were the Nets ever actually all that serious about trading him over the summer? Or was this always the outcome that they wanted?
Well,
because
so this is when the debate gets boring, because the people want to make the debate, well, the Raptors wouldn't put Scotty Barnes in. The Raptors would have had to put Scotty Barnes, probably Anunoby, maybe another core play. Like, there was not going to be, it wasn't just Barnes and Flotsam for Kevin Durant. That's not what it was going to be. The other thing I'll say is, similar to the Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard thing, when you snapshot these debates at a moment when the Raptors are hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy and the Celtics are in the we didn't get Anthony Davis shambles, it looks really, really bad. 2 years later, when the Celtics are in the finals up 2-1 and everyone's ready to crown their ass, it doesn't look really bad. when you spotlight this one, Durant is lighting the world on fire. Scotty Barnes is struggling. The Raptors are struggling. The Nets are winning. It looks really bad. Flash back 4 months ago. It's like Kevin Durant hasn't played more than 55 games in 4 years. He's 30 something. He seems to kind of grow unhappy wherever he goes. Like, there were these real questions. Some of those questions could pop up again tomorrow. Scotty Barnes, I don't know why. I just don't know how many times we're going to have to live this where a guy who just turned 21 is not making the giant year 2 mega leap everyone assumes he's going to make. And it's now, well, he might just be a one-time all-star. He's a bust. Like, my projection of Scotty Barnes long-term hasn't really changed because of 30 games. As yours?
I think it was a little lower in the first place because I wasn't as convinced about the mid-range shooting that we saw last season. Like, he was such a poor outside shooter in college, which is part of the reason that I wasn't as high on him as I should have been going into the draft. So I think this is actually more like what I would have expected from Scotty Barnes 2 years into his career, if you take away the rookie season and the expectations that set. So it maybe hasn't affected it as much from that standpoint as it has people who got really high. I mean, I think that's like Tatum was the ultimate example of this. He had that playoff run his rookie season where they got to the conference finals. And then year 2, it was, what's wrong? Why hasn't he made the leap? Why isn't he all-star already? Then year 3, he was great. And year 4, they took a step back. And, year 3, they made the conference finals. Year 4, they took a step back. And year 5, like, you can't ride the roller coaster so much with some of these young players. Anthony Edwards is the other guy that's happening to this season. Had that great playoff series against Memphis. And people thought, well, that's who he is. That's the floor that he's going to start from next season and improve from at age 21 or whatever he is. And it's like, no, actually, he wasn't quite at that level the whole regular season. And development is not linear.
And every time he has 9 assists in a game, all the Wolves people are like, yeah, the leap is happening. That's 3 good passes. And it's like, there's just beware the 3 of 16 with 7 turnovers a game is coming around the corner. And then that'll be followed up with the 5 of 15. It doesn't always happen that way. Do you have any holiday wishes, Kevin Pelton? Is there a gift that you really want to get? Is there something on your list, your holiday list, that you really want?
Not specifically. No, I mean, I feel like I've got what I need. So I'm just excited to spend time with more family this year than the last couple of years, which will be nice.
You know what I wanted? I was asked by my loved ones, what do you want? Number one, I want a nap, but that's not the only material good that I could think of is that I want a salad spinner. That's the only thing I asked for, a salad spinner.
It's a very adult,
I don't know if it's me or lettuce or hydration. If you ask me to make a salad, I could wash the lettuce at 8 a.m, spend 10 minutes of every hour for the next 12 hours drying the lettuce, and it would never dry. I don't know how anyone dries. I don't know how lettuce gets dry after you wash it. I don't understand. I can't do it. So I'm getting a salad spinner.
Well, there you go. That sounds
because everyone complains my salads are too soggy, and I won't have it anymore. Kevin Pelton has a great column up on ESPN today, going through the muck of the West that I'm going to talk about Adam Morris of DNVR Sports with in a second. Great column. Everything Kevin does is great. I will see you soon, my friend. Thanks for popping on.
Yeah, happy holidays. Happy Festivus to everyone listening to this when it comes out.
Happy Festive. Festivus is the 23rd?
The 23rd, yes.
All right, we're going to air some grievances and have some feats of strength. Kevin Pelton, thank you, sir. Let's transition to my other NBA siren song, a team, a franchise, and a player I will never be able to kick no matter what. Sort of the opposite of Philly, which is my previous siren song that I have really little faith in. And this team I have more faith in. They actually have made the conference finals. The Denver Nuggets, 19-11, first in the Western Conference, about to get Michael Porter Jr. back after a weirdly kind of prolonged absence from a heel injury. Jamal Murray slowly but surely making his way back from a long time out. My favorite person to talk Denver Nuggets basketball with would be Nikola Jokic. My second favorite person to talk Nuggets basketball with would be Adam Morris of DNVR Sports. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Always coming in second to Jokic, though, I feel.
Well, look, if you're going to send a whole crew of people to Serbia to do a documentary on the guy and the history of basketball in the former Yugoslavia, you are going to come in second to that guy.
Yeah, happens a lot. And I'm not the only one, apparently, that comes in second to him. So I guess I'll just join the club.
And of course they share, my two Siren Song teams share all-time great centers who jostle for the MVP every season, including this season. Are you opting out of the Jokic MVP debate? Are people in Denver just like, he's 1-2, we don't care anymore, we're out on the whole thing?
I was out last year, to be honest with you. Like, I just did too toxic, too annoying. Just let it play out, see what happens. I will say, I was talking to somebody today and they made a strong point, which is to make it hard on Jokic to win a third one is actually a sign of respect. Michael, he could have been an MVP 7 times. LeBron could have been an MVP 7 times. And there's this understanding that you have to go above and beyond. And maybe it's fair, maybe it's not, but I kind of like the idea of, hey, there's players greater than Nikola who had to do extra credit to earn a third one in a row. So I guess I can stick with tradition and say, you know what, if he has to do extra credit, so be it.
It's Bird, Russell, and Wilt. That's the list. That's the MVP 3P list. That's what we're talking about. And look, I have my Friday column probably will come out by the time people listen to this. I have a line in there on Jokic that says, hey, look, 25, 11, and 9. He's shooting 62%, 68% on twos. Like, that's a joke. The Nuggets are plus 12 per 100 possessions with him on the floor, minus 14 with him off the floor. Leads almost literally every advanced statistic. He's number one.
The raw one too. The plus 12.8, I think, is number one in the NBA. Like, just raw, when you're on the court, do you win your minutes? I think that is also number one.
Yeah, as I've said this before with regards to Jokic, there's two kinds of like the on-off monsters. There's the on-off monster where the team is just okay when that person's on the floor and they fall to complete pieces of nothingness when he's off the floor. And then there's the one that really does merit MVP consideration. It's not a fake split. It's not a split that's just about the weakness of your bench. It's the one where elite on the floor, like the point differential would be better than any team in the NBA on the floor, and bad off the floor. And that's Jokic. And here's what I write in the column. Like, if you don't want to vote for Jokic for the third straight MVP, all I'm saying is start right now, 30 games into the season, preparing a better argument than I didn't want to vote for him for a third MVP. The argument could be Kevin Durant's amazing, Joel Embiid's amazing, Giannis is amazing, but like that argument is not good enough. I didn't feel like it. Didn't feel right. Like, that's not a real argument. That's a feeling, and you shouldn't vote with your feelings. Okay, the Denver Nuggets. Not a lot of talk about the Denver Nuggets this year. Just kind of quietly motoring along. 19-11, beat Memphis. Get by 15 or so the other night to move into first in the West. Middling point differential. A lot of close wins. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Kind of still waiting on the Jamal Murray thing. Kind of still waiting on the Porter thing. And I think the biggest reason why there has been a lot of Nuggets talk, other than all the Nuggets talk, is Jokic talk. There's no Nuggets talk. It's all Jokic talk. Yeah. They're third in offense. Great. 24th in defense. And they are 24th in defense despite, I think, what most people consider an average to below average defender, and Michael Porter Jr. being out of their starting lineup and being replaced by a very strong defender in Bruce Brown. And that lineup, which you and I talked about in the offseason, previewing this team, the sort of all defense lineup around Murray and Jokic, we were excited about that lineup to close games. That lineup has been absolutely as advertised. It's plus 57 and 269 minutes. And so here we are in like year 5 of the existential question. How do you build a championship level defense around Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and Michael Porter Jr.? They've tried everything. And as I want to talk with you about, in that Memphis game the other night, it was one of my sneaky favorite Nuggets games of the last 5 years because they actually did try everything, including some strategies they rarely try that I've been calling on them to try. So what's the answer, Adam? Is that the answer? Just try lots of different stuff? What's the answer?
So I think there's some interesting things that are going on here. You mentioned just to kind of set the table. Number one, and you could take these and say they're meaningful or completely meaningless, Zach. I don't know the answer to that. Denver is currently number one in clutch defense. And this has been a stat that has been true of them pretty much for most of the Jokic era. You mentioned the point differential is not great. They seem to be a team that is just 2 points better than whoever they play. If it's the worst team in the NBA, they're 2 points better. If it's the best team in the NBA, they're 2 points better. And they're a team that plays with their food, rarely gets up 20. And when they do, rarely sustains that, in large part because they just take the foot off the gas pedal.
Or they take Jokic out of the game. I mean, we do have to talk about that later, like the eternal struggle of, do we need 6 guys on the floor when Jokic rests? Like, why are they so terrible all the time, no matter who they play? But anyway, it
is an interesting thought experiment. But before we even get there, just thinking about Denver defensively, I'm not convinced. And I think they were 28th a week ago in defense, like even worse.
Yes, they were.
I'm not sure that they actually are the 28th best defense. They might be. They seem to be able to turn it on exactly at the moment they need to and get it done. And I think even this year, Michael Malone has had a couple freakouts, you know, in wins and even in winning streaks, 4 games in a row, and Malone's in the presser, you know, losing his mind. And I think even he is sort of, I don't want to say resigned to, but at least understanding that this team picks the spots of where and when they play defense. And when they do, it looks really good, as it did against Memphis the other night. So that's the first part. But I will say the most interesting thing, when I came on your show over the summer and we were talking about Denver's defensive upside, championship defensive upside, we talked about Bruce Brown replacing Michael Porter. And we just got a 3 or 4 week sample of that with Michael Porter out with the heel injury, which he'll return tomorrow night. But the thing that I noticed, and that lineup actually was good overall, but bad defensively, in large part, in my opinion, because you were going to a small lineup with Bruce Brown at small forward that just got out muscled and teams shooting over. And when you play Jokic up at the level of the screen and pick and roll, you need a lot of ground to cover on the backside, closing out on shooters and this or that. And I think what we're learning is length is as important as anything with Denver. And that is the most interesting thing that they tried and succeeded with against Memphis 2 nights ago.
Explain that. The length, what succeeded against Memphis 2 nights ago? So
2 nights ago, you lose Jamal Murray. He's out. I think he'll be back on Friday, but he takes a game off, maintenance. And you put Bruce Brown, who was playing small forward, 6'5" or so, playing small forward. You put him at point guard, and now he's guarding point guards. Ja Morant, he gets a duty on. Then you get Christian Brown, who's 6'7" and big, a thick-bodied guy into the small forward position. I think it is a regular large lineup that Denver had not been going to, and we had not seen that sort of size on the court. You're playing Vlatko Čančar at small forward. You close the game with Jeff Green at small forward. It's the longest lineup Denver had attempted really all season. And I think when you're bringing Jokic that far away from the rim and that far out, you get into the paint and everybody has to scramble and rotate and close out on the corner and rotate over. When you're doing that with guys who are 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", versus 6'8", 6'9", 6'9", it's just a meaningful difference. And I think that's something Denver hadn't gone to all year. And today, actually, at practice, Michael Malone made reference to it. We need to find length. We have length on the roster. We need to find ways to go to it more defensively.
It's a great point, because the defenses that have played, let's call it it's not blitzing, but up to the level of the screen, which is how Jokic himself wants to play.
Right.
Whether that's the correct answer for Jokic, the defender, is, I think, a subject of much debate within the Denver Nuggets. But that's how Jokic wants to play. And when you're the MVP and you got to be comfortable, you get a lot of leeway. The teams that have done that well, dating to the Heat of prime LeBron and Wade, even Minnesota last year kind of smoke and mirrors their way to a successful, we got to blitz with Karl Anthony Towns because God knows you can't protect the rim. They had Anthony Edwards, they had Jaden McDaniels, they had a bunch of big, huge, long wings covering tons of ground. And LeBron and Wade, it was like having 4 guys on the court, flying in, flying out. The Nuggets in that smaller group don't quite have that, which is why what I liked about that game is they played about 6 different kinds of defenses in that game. When Ja Morant started splitting traps at the top, they said, all right, you know what? Why'd we sign Bruce Brown? Why'd we get KCP? One reason is they're really good at getting over screens. Well, if they're really good at getting over screens and Nikola is not the fastest dude at the point of attack, let's drop him back like he's Brook Lopez. Bet on these guys getting over screens so that those guys don't just have a free runway right at a ground bound plotting 7-footer. And it worked pretty well. And then they tried the thing about 3 times in that game that I've been waiting for them to try more often, which is just get Jokic the hell out of the pick and roll completely. Like you'll see a lot of teams do with their centers. Okay, is there a bad wing on the, not bad, but is there just a spot up standstill wing on the floor? Nikola, you go guard him. We'll put Aaron Gordon on Steven Adams and switch some pick and rolls. And we saw that a few times in that game. And I sat there saying, here we go. This is the kind of variety I'm looking for. None of this to say Nikola Jokic is a bad defender, because I actually don't think he is. We've litigated this issue to death on this podcast. I don't think he's as good as the advanced stat numbers paint him out to be. I don't think he's as bad as the caricature of him paints him out to be. But the Nuggets defense is better with him on the floor. It's always better with him on the floor. Because if you look at the numbers, they get every rebound when he plays.
Yep.
They get many fewer rebounds when he doesn't. They force a ton of turnovers when he plays. They force like a laughably low number of turnovers when he doesn't. And even so, the best guards in the league are a tough matchup for him. So I think that variety is important. That schematic variety, whether the zone they tried will be a thing is, we'll see. The schematic variety is important. And to your point about Christian Brown, I'm never going to get it. It's just never going to, my brain is going to say Brown. It's just never going to happen. He's good. But Michael Porter Jr. is 6'10" or 6'11", and he's coming back. And as you and I have talked about, for all his limitations as a defender, upright stance, flat-footed, unclear interest level, at least at the beginning of his career, he's gotten pretty good at flying in and flying out, partly because he's huge. Yeah. And so, and obviously they need his shooting. This team does not take nearly enough threes. I think that will kick up when he comes back. I'm excited I'm excited to see them try to sort of, it feels like they're starting the season again now, and I'm excited to see them do it. Yeah. I want to go back to your defensive point first before moving to Michael Porter. And that is that I think with Denver, when you talk about Jokic being a good defender, he's really a great defender at 90% of it. It's the 10%. And I think when you talk about mixing up schemes, this is what you're talking about. Can we go to defensive? They're almost gimmicks. I don't think you can win 48 minutes playing the zones that they go to and putting Jokic on a guy in the court. You can't do that. But it's, can you defend well? And then when a team tries to say, okay, we're going to put you in the high pick and roll and do this or that, do you have things that you've worked on all season that now you can counter with that? So now a team has to readjust on the fly. And can you sort of be malleable enough and have enough things in your pocket that'll work? I mean, they went to a box and one last night, really a diamond and one last night against Ja for large periods. Again, a gimmick defense, but one that maybe you just have in your pocket that you're experienced enough at that in a playoff series, other teams are forced to go to their 4th, 5th, and 6th adjustments that they're less familiar with. So to me, this is Michael Malone and the coaching staff trying to come up with back pocket type defensive schemes that they're familiar enough with to get over the hump defensively in a playoff series. We'll see if it works. Look, there are only, their 2 core lineups are awesome. Yeah. Okay. I have faith in Bruce Brown off the bench. I think Christian Brown's good. I think Jeff Green is good. They should get 4 points for every Jeff Green Statue of Liberty dunk. It should just be worth 4 points, because it's becoming the most exciting nerd moment in basketball. You see it coming 5 steps away, and he's still going up and up and up. He's got the arm extended, and no one gets out of his way. It's always on somebody's face. It should be worth 4 points. You never see it coming. You know the craziest stat, Jeff Green, I think he's 35 years old. He had a career high in dunks last year. He's on pace to match it this year. Somehow and same goes for Aaron Gordon. Like, the paint's opened up for Denver, and then you get out. I don't think Aaron Gordon's missed a shot the entire year. It seems like he hasn't missed, and he must lead the league in get the ball right under the rim, pump fake, get blocked, and then rise up again and just angrily dunk and scream on the surrounding defenders like a superhero and just pop out of the fray. He's been amazing. No Jeremy Grant regret in Denver, by the way. No, they respect Jeremy Grant. They respect the player he's become. No Jeremy Grant regret.
Yeah.
Here are the only questions that matter. Number one, can they build a top 15 to 12 defense? TBD. Number two, can Michael Porter Jr. stay healthy? Like, who cares? That's a question any of us can answer. There's no analysis there. It either happens or it doesn't. Number three, and let's stop here for a minute. If they're going to win the championship, and make no mistake, that's the goal internally with the Nuggets, to win the championship. They're the idea that they're this cute team with this unusual MVP, that's over. Jamal Murray has to be, let's say, a top 20 to 25 NBA player.
Right.
He's never been an all-star.
Right.
He's never really been in the all NBA conversation, but at his best,
right,
he's sniffed that territory. Jamal Murray, since coming back from the ACL, which is a big injury, a long return, he's at like 17-5 on so shooting, 44%, 34% on threes. Has he been a top 50 player this year? Top 60 player? Like,
right.
He's not in the all-star conversation at all. Like, there's no case for him to make the all-star game. He's got to get back to true co-star level with Jokic. So tell me, as someone who watches this team every day and is around them all the time, what have you seen that's encouraging, not encouraging? Like, where are we going to be with Jamal Murray in 3 months?
Well, we'll start here. If you look at, now we're starting to do the nerd thing, but if you look at the per minute basis, a per 36, he's actually right on line with what he's been for the previous 4 years, almost within 1 point of every single season, 20 points, 4.3 rebounds, 6.3 assists.
Doesn't feel that way.
Well, he's not playing as many minutes, and the efficiency is below. I mean, he's a couple percentage points from the field and really, in particular, at the rim from where he was. But here's the thing. Jamal Murray has always been an inconsistent player. When you talk about, everybody thinks, oh, it was the bubble where he made that leap. He actually had some pockets of leap in him throughout his career, the previous 2 seasons, where he'd go on a 10-game heater where he's scoring 30 a game and on efficiency. And we've actually seen that already, Zach, this year. In the 2-man game between him, there have been 3-game stretches, 4-game stretches, 4th period of 5 games in a row, where those 2 guys just close the door on everybody because they score every single time. And not just score, but they score in ways that make you think, yeah, they can do that every single time. So the peaks, I think we're starting to see little hints of those peaks again, but it's been interrupted once by COVID and then once again now by an injury. So it's kind of had this little ramp up, stop. But I think already we're starting to see the hints of that. Now you just need to get him on the court for 20, 30 games in a row to get him back into that peak shape that all-star players play in, that I don't think he has reached at any point this season.
Yeah, I believe in Jamal Murray. I think when it's go time, he's going to be the player they need him to be, in part because what he and Jokic have is so unique and so special, and how they play off of each other. And I agree with you, for stretches this season, I even said this a month or so ago, you could see him beginning to realize, oh, I'm Jamal Murray again. I remember a game a month or so ago where whatever team they were playing switched a big guy onto him, and a big guy that shouldn't hang with Jamal Murray.
Sure.
And the first couple times he was like, oh, I don't know, this guy's kind of big and scary. I'm going to pass it off. And then like the 3rd or 4th time, you could see him being like, wait a second. This dude is slow. I'm just going to get by him. I'm going to kill him with a step back. And it was like, all right, now Jamal Murray's coming again. And so I have faith in that one. The defense one is TBD. How can we solve the just complete collapse of this team when Jokic is on the bench? Because you can just sit there and be like, well, it's only going to be 8 minutes in the playoffs, 7 minutes in a big playoff game.
No.
You can't lose those, but you can't lose those by a point a minute in playoff games. You just can't. And it seems like they've tried everything short of putting all the other starters on the floor when Jokic is on the bench, which is not something you're ever going to do really in the regular season. I'm on team free Zeke Najee. That's in my column tomorrow too. Free Zeke. And I want to, I once talked about this with LeBron in Cleveland, and the Cavs in the Love, Kyrie, LeBron era, even when they had Love and Kyrie on the floor, were always bad when LeBron rested. And I remember someone with the Cavs told me, it's just we think it's because when he's on the floor, the whole system is him. And no matter what, when you take him off the floor, we kind of just don't have a system to fall back on. I was like, yeah, but you have Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love to fall back on. And you look at the Warriors, right? The same thing with Curry, year after year. Even when they had Durant, their offense wasn't good when Curry was on the bench. And it makes me think that it makes me wonder about the theory that when your offense is built around the greatest passing big man of all time, and you take him off the floor, nobody really knows what to do, which is actually why Bones Highland, who doesn't care who's on the floor, Bones Highland thinks he's the best player on the floor at all times. He's actually perfect for those minutes. But it made me think back. Didn't they get Mason Plumlee? They traded Yusuf Nurkic and a first-round pick, not a G League first-round pick, an actual first-round pick with Yusuf Nurkic for Mason Plumlee. I remember them telling me, well, Mason's a really good passer. We think that will help us play the Jokic style when Jokic is on the bench. I just kind of had forgotten about that.
And it worked, by the way. And last year they had DeMarcus Cousins, who they picked up late in the season. And he's another guy that you can play in the post, play on the elbow, play at the top of the key. And their second unit, which was atrocious all year, turned into a strength. Even in the playoffs, it was a strength. So, and then one other guy, by the way, that never really got a chance in Denver, but I wish would have, was Isaiah Hartenstein. He's a guy who's kind of floated around the NBA. It is, I don't think, a great player, but he was in Denver for a while, and he showed a little bit of that, where if you're talking about 12 minutes a game, he might have been a good guy for that. But nonetheless, your point, you look at a team like Dallas, Luka Doncic is the system, but they've been good without him on the court. They've had some, their plus minuses have actually survived, and they've had some other things. So I think there's something to this theory, but I don't think it's unsolvable. I do think that you need an identity, and this is the biggest thing to me with Denver's second unit. The second unit has consisted of any number of 8-9 guys, stagger Jamal, stagger Michael Porter, try to play Zeke, try to play DeAndre, try to play Christian Brown, Davon Reed, Vlatko Cancar. I think Denver needs to commit to an identity there. Bones Highland is a great offensive player individually. It has not clicked for him as a floor runner for that group. The ball kind of sticks in his hands, which I think is fine. But when he's not making shots and when he's off his game, nothing else is happening. I think you need to find a lineup that works for him. And I actually think that second unit needs to have a lot of hustle, defense around Bones, and spread the court. They experimented in Memphis with playing KCP off the bench, a defensive player who can stand in the corner and open up space for Bones. And it worked, at least for one game. You get Michael Porter back. I think he's another guy that gives you a little bit more scoring punch, but you keep your defensive players. You said Zeke Naji, I agree with you. You keep some length out there and you keep some defensive players, and you count on Bones to try to score for you, but commit to an identity and commit to a group, I think, is going to be a big part of seeing if they can get over the hump with the roster they have.
I like it. Identity is the key word. They just need something to hang their hat on, right? It's like you think back to some of the great bench units, Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell. Like that was a clip. That was the bench unit. That was what they stumbled upon it. Didn't work as well in the playoffs because neither of those two guys' games stood up as well in the playoffs, but certainly did enough to, at the very least, keep the Clippers afloat, on bench units.
In Denver's experimented, Bones is shooting 40% on 11.5 threes per 36 minutes. I think that's the fifth most of anybody in the NBA, and he's shooting 40% on them. I think and a lot of those are deep, by the way. He likes the deep three as much as he likes the regular three. Denver has started to, over the last two games, start setting those screens well over up the logo, the way you do for Damian Lillard. He's so fast that if you're going to go under, he's comfortable taking a little bit of a long one. I know those can be unpalatable when he goes 0 for 3, 0 for 4 and a quarter, but commit to that, and then teams will start chasing you over. They already saw that in Memphis, where teams would go over the screen 30 feet from the basket, and he's getting downhill. He didn't finish against Memphis, and he needs to become a better finisher. But again, I think that's part of an identity that you can win with if you commit to it, and we know these are the types of shots we're looking for.
It's the right identity is the right word. And yeah, Bones is shooting 40% on threes. Is he shooting 40% on twos, or is it still in the 30s?
It might be somewhere right around there. He's been really bad at the rim this year.
And by the way, I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. He's awful defensively, just awful. Yeah. And he can't be awful. He's never going to be good. He can't just be a tire fire on every single thing that happens on the court. And I like Bones. And I warned people before the season, everyone who's predicting he wins 6 man of the year is getting a little over their skis. He's the second year
So true.
on a contending team, settled down, but he's good. Okay, so like let's zoom out. Where how you feeling? Like they've played the third easiest schedule in the league, although more road than home. Best record in the West. Talked about the point differential. Talked about the guys who've been in and out of the lineup. And you go through the West. Warriors are 11th. Lakers stink. Clippers are 5th, scrapping along. Pelicans on a losing streak. Grizzlies you just beat. Dallas is a mess. We can go on and on. I mean,
Sure.
are they? Do you feel like they're maybe the favorite? Like how do Denver people feel right now?
It's been I think it's been hard to be too encouraged by the team because of that 28th defense. It's felt a little bit like waiting for the season to start for them. And it's funny that you referenced, it starts now, you get Murray and Porter back. It feels like a reset. In Denver, we kind of joke, although we're also being serious. You recall back in 2016, the December 15th holiday that we invented.
I know the Jokic. Does it have a name yet?
Yokmas. We call it Yokmas.
That's right. I saw Katie Wingy, who's wonderful on the broadcast, tweet about Yokmas the other day. Tell people what Yokmas is.
Yokmas is a celebration of when the Denver Nuggets decided to put Jokic into the starting lineup and basically said, this is our guy. We're building around him. It happened his sophomore season, December 15th. And the Nuggets went on a run. At that moment, the team found their identity and they just started to say, okay, we're building something. Well, now we make a joke that every year Jokic comes into the season a little slow, just a little, doesn't seem quite as happy and motivated or whatever. And we always
you've been to Serbia. Now you see why.
I see. It's so true. You have to leave the horses. It takes about 2 months before you kind of get over it. But every year around this time, the Nuggets seem to get going, and you track it back. The Nuggets just got 2 wins after December 15th. Jokic is putting up 40 points, 27 rebounds, and 10 assists and doing these things. And it feels like the Nuggets season really has hit this phase 2, whatever you want to call it, this phase 2. And now you get Jamal Murray and Michael Porter back. And by the way, you said they had the easiest schedule. These strength of schedule things are always funny. Because, I mean, you're just trying to make an algorithm that gives you some kind of context. The Nuggets did not have they had 2 stints of 2-game homestands all the way up until earlier this week. They had 1-game homestand, 4 on the road, 1 game, 3 on the road, 1 game, 2 on the road. Basically, their home stops were just a part of an extended road trip that they had been on for the entire season. To this date, they have played the fewest home games of anyone in the NBA.
13.
So now I did the math a couple days ago that they had something like 51 days in Denver and 5 nights on the road between a couple days ago and January 23rd. So this home heavy stretch to me is the part where they're either going to become galvanized. They're already number 1 in the West, but I think that this is the moment where they make the move. The defense starts to look cohesive. Jamal Murray starts to get better rest and starts to get in better shape and comes back. This is the moment in time where I think it will or won't happen for the Nuggets to kind of start to show who they are. And by the way, they're in first place already and haven't quite hit that stride yet. So you asked me how I feel. I feel cautiously optimistic, noting that I haven't seen championship level defense for them outside of maybe 2 or 3 games all year.
Yeah, it's funny. I had 6 teams in my inner circle of championship contenders before the season. 6, like, if they're healthy, they don't need anything else. They're in the upper room, like Vince Carter would say. Right. 3 in the East and 3 in the West. And the 3 in the West were Golden State, the Clippers, and Denver. And so just by that logic, you would assume that I would consider Denver the favorite now because they're by far ahead of those 3 teams, among those 3 teams in the West. As I told Kevin Pelton before, he wrote a piece today where he would just kind of shrug his shoulders if you asked him who's going to win the West right now and probably pick the Grizzlies for today. Maybe next week that changes. I don't even know who I would pick, but I understand why he's picking the Grizzlies. And I think the Grizzlies are absolutely fearsome. I don't know why it's not Denver though. And like, I know the defense, we just talked about the defense. It's been limited and all that stuff. I know what this team is on offense. I think they can get to a good enough defense. I had them in my championship inner circle before the season. And to me, they're still there despite the defense being up and down, the health questions and all that. I think I think they have enough, and they better have enough because they don't really have the means to make a trade well, I mean, if you're going to trade, if you trade good young players like Christian Brown, you can get anyone you want. Not anyone you want. You can get a little upgrade. You can get a veteran upgrade or something. I don't think they should do that. I think they've got enough, man. I don't see why not.
I think over the next 4 weeks, I'm not saying it's a certainty to happen, but I would not be surprised if over the next 4 weeks, the sentiment nationally on the Nuggets changes. I think this is a big stretch for them. It's tough games. They have good teams coming into town, including Phoenix, Portland Friday, Boston's coming to town before too long, but they're home games. And like I said, it's underappreciated. Denver went to San Diego for training camp because they don't have a facility for it. Then they went on the road to California for 3 preseason games. And then they've been on the road for 2 months. And I know this because here I am in Denver and I never see them in practice. I never see them at home games because they're never here. They have an opportunity now to be home for a consistent stretch. They're getting guys back. And I just think it's going to make a big difference. If it doesn't, like I said, I think people will continue to count them out regardless of what their record is. But I suspect that they're going to have some marquee wins under their belt here between now and the end of January.
Well, the Phoenix game is, this is a good place to stop. The Phoenix game is interesting because I don't know. I can't remember if Booker's playing or not. Booker's been out the last few games.
Right.
But, Phoenix in the 2021 playoffs just sliced the Nuggets apart.
Yeah.
This absolutely beautiful pick and roll attack with 2 alpha ball handlers who can shoot pull-up threes if you drop back, who can torture you if you come out too far. And just the Nuggets had no shot. Just Phoenix, just all the Chris Paul kicks to Bridges drives, kicks to Cam Johnson, just over and over and over again. No shot. And it fueled the Jokic defense skepticism. And then you kind of zoomed out of the pain, right? Zoomed out of the ugliness. You thought, wait a second. Okay, they didn't have Jamal Murray. They're injury riddled up and down. Who did they start? Austin Rivers and I can't remember who else. Campazzo, that's right. And Jokic has just dragged them here. The entire regular season is absolutely out of gas. They don't have good defensive guards who can get over screens. Like there's an ecosystem there that is larger than Jokic that needed to be repaired that they could not repair then.
Right.
Well, it's been repaired now, mostly. Like it's not quite all the way repaired, but they've pivoted. They've got new guys. They have new ideas. And Phoenix was, I don't know if it was that series was a low point for the Nuggets because I think they went into that series. Yeah, we're exhausted, we're fatigued, we're injured a little. We just beat a Portland team who, frankly, probably thinks they should have beat us.
Right.
And we came into that series thinking we had a shot. And we got rolled, and it was ugly, and it was embarrassing, and it had us asking fundamental questions about our identity. And they've largely kept the same core group, same coaches, same everything. It's only one game. I don't know if Devin Booker is going to play, but that's the kind of offense, much like the Warriors' offense, that is an interesting test for them.
I agree. I mean, I think everybody in Denver that watches the Nuggets closely views Phoenix as this sort of test, this litmus test for them, as the one team that made them look like they weren't close. Even the Warriors last year, Denver was in those games in games 3, 4, and 5. You lose in 5 games, read into that what you will, but you were in the games. The Phoenix games were 4 blowouts. And then, so I think you're right that one, to me, and I think to a lot of people that watch the Nuggets closely, is one everybody's been waiting for to say, hey, let's see how they stack up this time with all of their pieces back.
It's going to be a fun second half of the season. I think they've got enough. I do think this is a big year for them. And I think it's a big year for them. And I think let's put it this way. I pay a lot of attention to the back end of their rotation on a night-to-night basis. Who plays, who doesn't play is very, very interesting to me. Adam Morris, second to none covering the Nuggets. I hope to see you soon. Thank you for your time. Enjoy some home games. Enjoy some home games for the Denver Nuggets, some sustained home games. Thank you, sir.
You know what? I will do that. Have a good holiday season.